You are now rocking with BizMode. Let's get into BizMode. What is BizMode? BizMode is entrepreneurship at its highest level. BizMode is flow state. BizMode is that hunger pain you feel. BizMode is success by your own definition. BizMode is operating from abundance. BizMode is what you make it. This is BizMode. What up, though? I am your host, Alex Bruno. I am the founder of Bruno Group Inc., a California law firm helping entrepreneurs and businesses with their legal stuff. Family, welcome back, and welcome back to BizMode. Launching a company is a challenge in and of itself. It was an even greater challenge for those of you that launched in the middle of this pandemic. That is amazing. And for those who did, I salute you. Our next guest, Carlos Aguilar, did just that when he launched Mestizo Coffee, a direct-to-consumer brand providing coffee for those who love coffee and want to up their coffee game. What Carlos and I chatted about was the power of storytelling and how storytelling can really help you build your brand and not only keep the customers that you do have, but keep them coming back and building on new customers. What Carlos also mentioned, and all of you founders need to take note of, is the power in making sure that you know your market and try to really drill down and know your market detail by detail as explicitly and as detailed as you can know it. It's going to provide a great sense of worth to you. It's going to provide a lot of value to you. We also got a little quick take on hip hop and who he thinks was and is underrated, and maybe he didn't get enough credit. So that was fun to do as well. Well, enough of what my takeaways were. Let's hear yours, and also let's hear directly from Carlos. Hope you enjoy. Carlos, welcome to BizMode.
Happy to be here, Alex. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man. No, thank you for being on, and I'm hyped to have you on. So why don't we just start with just giving us a little tidbit about who you are?
Sure. My name is Carlos Aguilar Jr. I add the junior just in case you want to jump on Google and you search Carlos Aguilar. First, you'll probably find 47,000 of us. But even if you do my hometown and you search La Puente, California, or Bassett, you might find my dad. But you also would find me because I grew up in the same neighborhood as my dad. Actually, my mom and dad went to high school in La Puente. I went to high school in La Puente, California, as did my brother, sister, cousins. So we represent the Aguilars from the La Puente region. So that's where I'm from and where I'm at.
Very nice.
Here in San Gabriel Valley in California. And I work as a writer and producer at an advertising agency, and recently launched my coffee brand, Mestizo, at the top of 2021, right in the thick of the pandemic.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Mestizo. What was your inspiration to get it going?
Well, basically I had a conversion experience. I don't know if you're familiar with this story of Saul on the road to Damascus, and right. He gets struck by an apparition of Jesus and decides he's going to convert and change his ways. And something similar to me happened with coffee, where I'd been drinking coffee as a teen, there at the counter with my grandmother in La Puente, and sparingly in college, and then as an adult when it was around. And of course, because I'm addicted to sugar like the rest of America, I'd put the sugar and the creamer and the flavored this and the that. But then I even took a step up. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna drink this shit black. But lo and behold, I'd been drinking bad coffee all along, because 4 years ago, I noticed a friend of mine on social media posting content about a coffee competition. And I was like, What competition level coffee? Like, that piqued my interest. I had interest in the finer things in life that I could afford, at least. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I invited him to our office to show the staff like what this competition grade coffee was. And when he showed up with a scale, a brew device, a jug of water, 4 bags of coffee. And he made coffee in a way I hadn't seen coffee made before. And I'd been to Starbucks and Pete's and all this, but this represented a new type of thing. Actually, they refer to it as a new wave, the third wave of coffee in America.
Mm-hmm.
The first wave of coffee in America is when Americans started consuming coffee at home. You had your Folgers, your Sanka, heaven forbid, your U-Ban or your Don Francisco. And the second wave, though, was when Americans started to go up to Starbucks and your Pete's and paying for like the specialty coffee, the special coffee drinks outside of the home. And then this third wave of coffee emerged in the U.S. and probably best represented by Blue Bottle, Intelligentsia, some of these brands on the West Coast. But this is specialty coffee where the grade of coffee is higher and the consumer is interested in the farming, and the farmer's interested in producing a better quality, higher quality, more costly coffee. And then all along the route from growing the coffee to roasting the coffee to brewing the coffee, the consumer was aiming for quality and craftsmanship and really pronounced flavor profiles. So that's the third wave of coffee. And so that's what my boy brought in. And he happened to be a philosophy professor too. So he was even extra thoughtful about coffee that day. And sure, lo and behold, I tasted the coffee and I tasted blueberry and it blew my mind. I was like, how is this the same thing that this other thing that I was calling coffee? These aren't the same thing. Like,
right.
And so that just opened my eyes to this world of coffee. And so 4 years ago, I started to spend more money, basically doubling my budget on coffee, but and also just pursue the experience of and discovery of this drink, that's grown all over the world and whose flavor profiles are as broad as wine. So it was a pursuit, and then because of my experience in criticizing stuff, and I was like, "This is just a bunch of shitty coffee." And my experience in crafting content and experience for Latino audiences as a writer and producer in television, I thought coffee was a great experience product, a particular type of coffee, to bring to this audience, and so or to a particular audience, Mexican Americans or Latinos, kind of more broadly. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided to launch a direct-to-consumer coffee brand.
Right. So you've done a DTC brand, and I'm curious. So how do you drink your coffee now in terms of like, how do you make it?
That's right. So I too have a scale, you know what I'm saying? So it's all about, there are a bunch of variables in the coffee brewing process. Water, of course, the type of water. You're going to want a certain type of filtered water. I just bought a water additive. I saw a product called Pure Water Coffee, which claims to enhance the flavor profile of your coffee. And I saw two people I trust use it and say it in fact did that. I bought some, used it. It didn't do that. So there's probably something wrong with me. It's my suspicion. But at any rate, water is really important. What's in the water, and then the temperature of the water, then your ratio of water to ground beans and the size of the grounds. The more finely ground coffee is, the more time the water is going to spend with the coffee. So it's going to extract more flavor. And the larger the grounds, the less time the water is going to spend in contact with the coffee. So the taste is going to, with the same beans, one and the same beans, you'll ground, at different sizes and you'll extract different flavors. So it's a matter of grounding it, weighing it, and then pouring it according to your device. I use a pour over. I use a Hario V60, but I also have an AeroPress, and I also have the glass jar, the Chemex. But I'm always like down to try new shit. There's Japanese methods. There's a bunch of cool methods. Like if you go into it, well, here's the thing. And here's interesting about the product. Like the product could be like 100% like awesome by the time it reaches your doorstep, Alex, but you could fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like your water could be too hot, your grounds can be too big, your ratios could be all off. And you're gonna blame me. You know what I'm saying? So part of what I do is like part of my project is coffee education in the process. So I'm introducing a new product. Hey, yes, you've had coffee before, but if you haven't had specialty coffee, this needs to be handled differently if you want to get the most out of it. And so it's a challenge, because most people, Latinos in the U.S. consume more coffee than their white counterparts, it's usually just like the mass-produced industrialized coffee. So they're just making it in any old way and not paying special attention to the brewing. But that's starting to change. And there's more of us who like, we want top shelf tequila, we want top shelf indica, but now we want top shelf coffee, and we will pay for it. And that's my target audience.
Nice. No, I think it's really cool. I'm curious because I've been on I was on a similar conversion journey where I would I think in college is really where my first when I fell in love with coffee, but it was really, there's a lot of sugar component to it, right? So it was always something with a chocolate in it or some kind of sweetener in it. Then when I got into law school, needed some more coffee, of course, but it always had some kind of additive to it, some kind of creamer, some kind of half and half sugar and then I think about 5 years ago, it was actually more of like an indigestion thing, because I was like, why am I always having indigestion in the morning? I'm like, well, shoot, I'm putting creamer. Is what got to be the creamer. So I cut the creamer, and like you said, up the coffee in terms of the type of coffee.
Yep.
And then of course the method. The next thing was the methods. But the first thing was cutting the sugar and realizing, wait, this coffee does taste good if you don't get it from some of the places where they over roast their beans and make sure they have this distinctive burned smell to it, aka Starbucks. It's like you said, it's really good. You can taste notes. I'm like, oh, this is chocolate. Oh, this is, you can taste stuff in it. And so now it's like I'm on that the Hario V60. We have a fellow one at the office. The fellow kettle. I think it's called fellow.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm on that pathway too. I'm the target audience, so to speak. Right. So, Carlos, we're talking about you started Mestizo right in the middle of the pandemic, right in the middle of 2020, and I'm sure it's been a great journey, and we're going to explore some of it with that. So one question is kind of like, what can you identify as the most rewarding thing so far in your journey?
Sure. I think probably with a lot of entrepreneurs, one thing we seek is, I don't know if the term is affirmation, or some signal that what we're making people are interested in, and not only people, but people maybe beyond my immediate circle. And so when I saw people ordering from the site that I had no immediate connection to, that was a signal that maybe some of the messaging was working. And the messaging was saying, hey, you drink coffee. You also like good stuff in life. And maybe it's time for you to level up and buy some coffee that's made by someone coffee that's brought to you by someone who looks like you, and coffee that's connected to some stories that are probably of more interest to you than rando coffee brand in the supermarket. And so I think getting some of those early signals, because I knew immediately coffee is oversaturated market. It's commodified. In fact, one of the first things I say to people once they buy the coffee via my email is, I know you can buy coffee anywhere. Thank you for buying coffee here. And I think that's true with a lot of products. We can buy a lot of products anywhere. There's a lot of just commodified goods out there. And we end up buying those goods or with those brands that somehow reflect us, I think, and more consumers are interested in that kind of thing. So I've wondered, I wondered if there was a coffee brand that said, hey, I'm brown like you, and I like top shelf experiences like you. And then kind of even more. So my brand Mestizo also infuses hip hop, philosophy, and comedy into the content that I create around the brand. And so it's this coffee brand. And then, the coffee shop is a place for conversation and exploration and discovery. And so I take that. As a DTC brand, I don't have the opportunity to have a storefront and invite people in for those kind of conversations, but I could do it virtually. And that's part of what I've done in supplementing not only the product offering, with some content,
No, and I think that's cool because like you said, you're adding a story to it, or you're building a story. So what, if I can kind of ask this question, what came first? Was it the idea of the stories, the idea of or the coffee, like in your
Sure.
in your thought process here?
Yeah. So like in some ways, I often will tell people that Mestizo is a media lab masquerading as a coffee company. Now, I create content as my line of work, but I also have a dad blog called Big Brown Dad that I've been producing for 5-6 years, and I've had fun with it, and I've had a just really modest audience, and I've wanted to do more, and I've had some fun doing some video series around it, but nothing that really took off, nothing that anybody would pay for, quite frankly. I mean, shoot, I know the New York Times has a hard time convincing people to pay $5 a month. So I knew, okay, maybe some of these media things I want to do, I might not be able to get people to pay for it. And so I might not be able to do those things. But if I had a product that they can buy into, a product that kind of was also really representative of me, an extension of me that was authentic to me, that if they bought the coffee, that money could fund some of these media storytelling ambitions that I have. And so I do think, so it's really a way to supercharge some of the storytelling that I'm doing through Mestizo. And that mission is around diversifying representations of the Latino experience in media.
Mm. Okay. And so tell me about, I mean, about storytelling, right? So that's a key component for you, right? You mentioned, it's Big Brown Dad, not Mr. Big Brown.
That's
Maybe
right.
Your handle's Mr.
That's right. That's right. My handle is Mr. Big Brown Dad. Yeah.
But you are a storyteller. So is there a certain medium that you really like? Is it writing? Is it like spoken word, so to speak, or is it video? What do you really, is there one that you're like, you love more than the other?
It's probably talking. So this is the kind of bridge I'm learning to cross now. So I do a lot of writing for work, and then I do kind of writing for my blog as well. I don't have a problem with writing, but I even have a problem with talking. So I need to bridge that. And so in some ways, I view writing as refined talking. So our thinking, then talking, then writing, something like that. Like, so right now I'm working on producing more writing by bridging that gap between talking and writing. Some of that. So I dictated something recently where I had a writing assignment, and I was like, let me talk through this, like legit record, talk through it, and then go back and pull out the things that might have some value. So it's I guess I like talking. I like talking in front of people too. So I think as a performer, I like performing as a rapper. So I haven't rapped on stage in 10 years or so. So it's like that performance bug. This is what's going to be interesting. And one thing I found is that coffee is going to connect a lot of dots culturally, creatively, artistically for me, and the collaborations that I'll be able to do, the conversations I'll have, and I'm already starting to see the fruit of that. So coffee is going to be my favorite medium soon. Showing up with a bag of coffee, you know what I mean?
So you talked about that performance bug. So is what you're doing with Mestizo kind of helping kind of scratch that itch? Like, when you have like comedians on and you're kind of doing what we're doing, right? You're kind of like taking them through their stuff. Is that kind of helping you with that?
Absolutely. But even like, so how about this? So shit, I'm gonna have to do it now because I don't know. Once I talk about it, I'm more likely to do it. But I have been developing this idea now that I'm fully vaxxed. Okay, so my challenge with Mestizo, of course. So okay, I'm DTC. Well, the margins on a cup of coffee in the store are great, and the margins on a bag of coffee DTC are not great. Okay, maybe I could get my bags in stores. Well, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to get in Albertsons or Lucky or right off the bat. Okay, that's cool. Maybe I can get into local coffee shops. No, that's not going to happen because local coffee shops have their own coffee or their own existing relationships. Usually some of these bigger coffee brands will come in, give free equipment, and you'll have to take their coffee. So there's a bunch of stuff that's going on that's going to prevent my coffee from being in coffee shops. So I'm like, be fun and funny. What if I made a list of the 10 donut shops, panderias, bakeries, kind of coffee adjacent businesses, and went in. So here's the performance part. 'Cause sales is performance in some ways, right?
Right. You got it.
So it's like, all right, and then I like having fun. So let me back up 1,000 feet or whatever. It's like, I'm not paying my mortgage off this coffee just yet. So a lot of the decisions I'm making, these are not the decisions of someone who needs to sell as many bags of coffee as quickly as can in order to keep the lights on. I know that's a legit model, and I'm not even mad at it. Like, soon I might be running a parallel. This is a brand. Mestizo's a brand. It's not it's not a coffee selling business. This is a brand with a message, with a voice, with a story that wants to do things a certain way that doesn't always translate into selling as much coffee as possible to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. Right. So I say all that to say I like having fun. So to bring it all back, I want to document, either with a hidden camera or just with the audio, me walking into these donut shops saying, "Sir, my name is Carlos Aguilar. I'm with Mestizo Coffee. Who's your coffee guy?" Whatever the fuck. Like, I'll have my pitch down, and just to document the 10 no's I'm going to get. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then, hey, maybe I won't get in those donut shops or whatever, but I'll have 10 pieces of funny content, you know what I mean, of me getting shot down, and then or me analyzing what happened, what went wrong, why it could have worked, why it didn't work, why it'll never work, that kind of stuff. So
I'm just thinking you can multi-purpose it, right? So you're already thinking about how you multi-purpose it, because everyone's talking about multi-purposing things you do, but it's like, shoot, it's self-reflection, it's self-analysis, but at the same time, you're like, oh, you might come up with something funny, like, you might have an old school owner saying, "Get the hell out of here! We're still drinking Folgers from Costco." Like,
exactly. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do at least. Well, I'm gonna do some. I don't know if it'll be 10 or 12 or 5 or 3, but I'm going to do some funny shit, because I'm gonna know the name of the guy before I go in, because I'm gonna go to Yelp and say, "Okay, Harry." I'm gonna know the names. I'm gonna know enough to make it funny. But on the other hand, how about this? If I'm able to put on my website, Mestizo Coffee carried at these 12 locations in these 2 neighboring cities, like, that's kind of dope. And that's also part of, I don't know if it's dope. It's a dope story. That's what I mean by dope. And that's kind of part of what I'm doing, which is like, when I think about some of my business objectives, it's connected to what's a cool story I can tell related to what I did. You know what I mean? Like, is that a cool story, bro? Like, yeah, like, cool story, bro. Thanks. Like, that's basically what I was out to do. I converted 10 local donut shops, or 2 of 10, or none of 10, but so that's part of what drives a lot of what I do. As you might know, that I produce these comedy roasts to kick off the brand. So the brand kicked off in January of 2021. So I hosted a virtual comedy roast with some comedians, and we roasted the year 2020. And then in Valentine's Day, we roasted love. And so, trying to think of creative ways to talk about coffee and integrate coffee lifestyle.
No, it's great. And since you're in this space, you're in the creative space, you're doing it yourself for your brand, for your coffee company. We're in a world right now where there's very short attention spans, right? So that's why I think TikTok's so popular, because it's just like boom, 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 and then you're done. So what is there a way that you've seen a strategy, like how to hold on to someone's attention span and keep them watching, or keep them listening, or keep them reading?
This is a good question, because early on I thought that subscribers were going to be the key to my business growth, which was to say, people that I could almost set it and forget it. Like, they've decided they want this coffee, they're going to buy it, they're not even going to think about it. Therefore, I don't need to think about them. And as many of those folks as I could get on my list as fast as possible is going to be my key to success. And maybe there's still some truth to the value of, always on recurring revenue, you know what I mean? That I don't need to think about. But as it turns out, a couple of things are true, at least early on in my analysis. There's certainly a subscription fatigue. People are oversubscribed. Like, shit, I subscribe to Hewlett Packard for my printer, bro. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me why, but these motherfuckers are getting $3.99 a month out of me. Like, I bought a new printer and all of a sudden I'm subscribing to a fucking printer company. At any rate, I love coffee and I'm going to be slow motion to subscribe to another thing, even if it means spending more money, even if it means I go to the website 3 times a month versus 1 time a month. Like, I think that's a behavior that I'm noticing, because I do have recurring buyers who would rather pay more, again, this is all tentative top line analysis,
right.
But who would rather pay more than subscribe to something. Okay. Well, if you're going to buy every month or every 5 or every 6 weeks, I need to be the top of mind. Mestizo needs to be top of mind when you're ready to make that decision, right? So that presents a challenge for me. Whereas I might be thinking about my coffee all day, all the time. I know other people aren't, right? I know I want to be in your inbox every day with, hi, you know what I'm saying? Thirsty? But please, like, hey, I'm only a coffee brand, bro. We don't need to talk every day. So it's a challenge for me to get to be top of mind when my customers are thinking about coffee at different times of the day, at different days of the week, at different intervals. So it's like, how do I do that? This is one thing that I've decided to do was, focus on the 220 customers I have instead of the 220 customers the next 220 that I want, So how could I better serve the 220 people that I have, and so that I am top of mind when they are thinking of coffee, just in virtue of like having some sort of relationship with them. And to borrow a metaphor from maybe church or something, is like, how do I nurture this flock? How do I cultivate this audience so that when they're thinking about coffee, they're thinking about me? And that doesn't mean that, because I've decided against creating 15 pieces of content a day so that I can be in people's timeline in 100 different ways. Like, that makes sense for certain businesses with certain resources and certain objectives, but like, that's not me right now. I'm going brick by brick, person by person, knocking on people's doors. Hi, do you drink coffee? I sell coffee. And then boom, I got two more people, and that's going to be that I'm going to go that route until, 100,000 people have bought my coffee, and I'm able to sell all your new, email addresses to a big company for millions of dollars, guys.
You heard it here first. No, I mean, but there's something to be made about that organic growth, right? So, and despite there's a lot of chatter of what we call scaling and scaling fast, a brand like yours can do really well with that organicness, because you're getting what people want, which is not just followers, because that's one situation that people have always focused on, followers, but people who are really committed, people who are part of the community, people who are like, yeah, this is part of my identity now. Is like, I get Mestizo coffee. That's part of my identity. So that's kind of like back in that whole spiritual, back in that whole church vibe. That's kind of like, you getting believers. You're not just getting, yeah, this is good. You're getting believers. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an accident. So, I actually have a seminary education. So I went to seminary, studied the philosophy of religion and ethics, but also theology. And, there's no accident that the term evangelism is used in marketing and in church life, in Christianity. And brand evangelists and evangelists both do the same kind of thing. They spread the good news about whatever they're offering. And so I do think that framework, I keep coming back to it, I keep coming back to that framework. Like, okay, how can I, how about this? We talked about Saul already. Why don't we go to Jesus and the Great Commission? But you'll know, like, Jesus after his resurrection came back down, talked to the homies, and he was like, yo, you have a job to do. You're going to go to these places. And if you look at it, it's like the regions he lists expand in concentric circles. It's like, first you're going to go to your area, then beyond that, and then to the outermost parts of the world. And that's kind of my approach. Like, I need to tell all the people that I know that I sell coffee, and then all the people I come in contact with, and then I'm later I'm going to talk to these guys out here that I don't know. But first I need to lay some groundwork.
Nice. No, that's totally the right approach. So you're in the middle of it, right? You're still in the early stages. But if someone were to come to you and say, "I have this idea for a new hustle, a new business," if there's a piece of advice you could give them, what would you tell them?
I would say get a fix on your market, and define your target as explicitly as possible. And that's another way of saying resist the temptation to be all things to all people.
Was there a motivation for seminary for you? We haven't touched that. Like, was there, or you just like what motivated you to get into seminary?
At the time, I was identified as an evangelical born again Christian, and so I had before my coffee conversion experience, I had like a regular generic old religious conversion experience as like an 18-year-old, and then got heavily into the Bible. I became a gospel rapping evangelist.
Yeah, okay.
While as an undergrad, and published, published a magazine, a hip hop magazine as an undergrad. Started writing for the college newspaper as an undergrad, and about food. And so my identity as a writer was connected to hip hop and food. And I was going to go on to get a PhD in philosophy. That was the plan. I was going to go get a PhD in philosophy and then teach at a university, debate atheists, and write books. That was like my ambition. But that was no longer my ambition after a while. And so because that was my ambition, I went to get a master's degree in the philosophy of religion and ethics at Talbot School of Theology and study under some of the professors whose books I'd been reading. And then I was going to go get a PhD elsewhere. But I got my first television writing job shortly after finishing seminary and decided that I was going to pursue writing and entertainment instead of academia.
Okay. From your viewpoint, let people know about certain underrated MCs that you'd say these people should be given more credit. Give me 2 or 3.
I'm going to go... I always like throwing this one out there because people definitely do not expect this. Now, there's a popular debate about who's the best Latino MC or hip hop group or whatever. There's actually a little known Christian rap group from Southern California. 2 guys, cousins, who are Mexican American. They go by LPG, and they put out gospel rap in the mid '90s that was ahead of its time. And they were integrating underground styles and flows. So to call it church rap almost gives it a bad rap off top. But these guys defied expectations. But lyrically, they deserve a lot more credit for what they've done. And then I'm going to go with, if you haven't had a chance to listen to any Madlib's music, Madlib's a producer from the 805.
Yeah, of course. Oxnard.
Oxnard in the house. All-time favorite. And okay, how about this? And maybe this will be a good way to kind of tie it all together. Madlib is my favorite producer of all time. Madlib, what? Jay, and Dilla, of course, and Jay
Dilla. Rest in peace.
Great. But I was like, there's no way, how would I ever? I mean, we're in LA, I'm saying I'm a hip hop head, but would we ever work together? Probably not, of course. Why would we? Except coffee, bro. Except for coffee. Coffee brings people together in unexpected, different ways. And
that's right.
My next collaboration is with a hip hop artist. We'll be putting out a collaborative coffee, and this hip hop artist has an entire album produced by Madlib. One of the songs on that album is about coffee, and we will be doing some media around this song that Madlib produced, that Alameno from the Visionaries, he's the MC that I'm working with. He has an album, and we're going to be putting out. So I'm going to be working with some of Madlib's material in one way or another, which is going to be, again, just a wonderful, just delightful product of being in this coffee game.
Well, I'm just glad Mad Lib's finally getting some credit, like in terms of talking about credit. Like this could be a whole episode in itself, but he's been getting a lot of credit lately, and it's long overdue.
Man.
Nice. And you just told us what's happening next, because that was one of my questions, like what's next for you. So that's good. We'll look out for that. Any ideas of when you'll be able to get it out? Like when's it gonna like launch?
Probably in under a month. So we're designing we're designing the labels now. We landed on a name. We landed on a roast. We're working on the design. We're figuring out the media play, and small business is like, I might have like $700, $1,000 to throw into a project. Let's see what we could do and see if that could turn into 3,000. I bet next time around. Hey, I'm not even gonna tell you what this is like. You can probably connect the dots, but you take that 7, turn it into 3, take that 3, turn it into 5, take that 5, turn it into 9. That's what we're doing here with this coffee. So appreciate any support.
No, of course. And so if people can support you, how can they get a hold of you and keep following your journey?
You just plug into the website, mestizo.coffee, and then you could find us on Instagram at mestizocoffee, and then bigbrowndad.com, and Mr. Big Brown Dad on Twitter. So definitely hit me up, tap in. Collaborating is the wave, so let's figure out a way to do it.
Very cool. Carlos, Big Brown Dad, thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Alex, thank you for having me, bro. Appreciate it.
All right. Until next time, BizMode family, this is your host, Alex Bruno, Bruno Group Inc., BizMode Podcast. Keep your family first. Always strive for perfection. Don't forget, none of this is legal advice. By the way, what happened to peace? Peace.